Welcome back to our brand new studio. Sit back and relax, and let's go on to part two. Point two, the Bible is outdated. All right, Bradley asks about meaning, that it's like a grab bag, and that people feel like life is meaningless, and it's like a grab bag. They just sort of select the things they want to latch onto, and those things they hope are meaningful. And Weinstein says this, that the Bible's outdated and a cover to cover reading is incoherent, and that it needs clergy for contemporary application. So what he's doing here is saying, look, if you start at the beginning, you start at Genesis and read all the way to Revelation, you'll get the end and just be confused. And so he's saying, look, it's incoherent if you go from cover to cover. And he's like, you also need to take the things that are going on in contemporary times, and you need to go to a church and have clergy cipher for you how to apply the Bible to what's going on in the world today. Now, I have several responses to this. The first is this: you will not find a text in the world, not one, except maybe a haiku. But even that, okay, you're not going to find a text that isn't progressive in how it relays information. Okay, the Bible's called a progressive revelation. So this is really important. It's like, look, in some sense, a sentence is a progressive revelation. I don't think this point has substance. It could be that I'm underestimating what Weinstein's trying to say here, but I don't think so. I've listened to this debate a lot, and I'm just like, I just don't think that's a substantive critique. I remember when I was a kid, we had, for some reason, 3 or 4 Encyclopedia Britannicas. And there was one of them was maps. Several of them had maps. And I remember it was really interesting. I was a kid, every once in a while I would pull this thing out and look at it because it was cool. And what it would be a map, and it would just be like the topography of an area. Then there'd be a clear page, and you would put the clear page over it, and it would be the borders. And another clear page over that, and that would be the cities. Another clear page, and that would be the roads. And as you were putting these clear pages on top of the first map, you were getting more information. Was the first map not true? No, it was true. Was the third map any more true than the first map? No. It's just you didn't see that information until you put the next clear page over to reveal more. So it's no less true or more true. It's all equally true. You just gathered more information about what was going on. And that's the relationship between the Old Testament and the New Testament. You get more information as you go along. All right. So I didn't find that this was a very good critique. And McGrath responds, he says, well, the Bible offers a worldview. And that was kind of really his response. And so Justin Bradley presses McGrath on this. He says, well, could you offer your position as true? Now, this is where it gets really ironic. So Bradley started this by saying, well, there seems to be meaninglessness out there. And everybody can pick and choose what they want to determine what's meaningful. Now, this is where you're going to think earlier in the last video where I said it's going to sound like McGrath did horrible. It's not. It's just he didn't really put much oomph behind what he was saying, and so it was hard to kind of grasp what he was trying to say. But it gets ironic. You know what McGrath says here when Bradley presses him? He says, well, worldviews are like an all-you-can-eat buffet. You pick the one you want. And think about that. Bradley brings up a really good point to Weinstein. Hey, there seems to be meaninglessness in the world where people just pick and choose what they want. And McGrath all of a sudden says, yeah, well, the world's like a smorgasbord, or like an all-you-can-eat buffet where you just pick what you want. You pick the worldview you want. And what did he mean by this? He meant that he concedes that his worldview can't be proven, and ironically compares the problem to buffet, which implies meaninglessness. There was a guy walking last night at work, was the night before. I don't know. It's all blending together at this age. And I stopped him because I had this thought kind of going on in my mind, running in my mind. And I said, hey, I want to stop you here real quick, bud. And he's like, yeah. I said, I want to ask you a question. I said, okay. I said, let's say you could take a fish and give him a human mind. And you couldn't pull him out of the water because he would die. It's okay. You have an opportunity to reason with this fish. And I said, how could you prove to this fish that it's in water? And he sits there for a second. He's like, I don't know. I don't know that I could. And I was like, I think it's a really good answer. I said, I don't know that I could either. Without the ability to contrast, how could I prove to a fish that he's in water? I said, let me ask you this. I said, I've had many people say that they don't believe in God because of lack of evidence. I said, what if it's like this fish? What if the evidence is always there? And you've just grown so accustomed to it that you just don't even see it anymore. And he thought about it and went, that's possible. I said, yeah. I said, let me ask you this. I just unloaded on this poor guy. I said, I don't even know where he was in his life, but I guess he was at the wrong place in the wrong time. But in the eternal scheme of things, right place at the right time. I said, let me ask you this. How much evidence is enough? You might go, well, that's not fair if the evidence has always been around me and I just don't see it anymore. Is that fair? I said, how much evidence is enough? And he was like, I don't know. I guess until I believe. Or I said, well, let me ask you this. Who gets to decide what's enough evidence? You or God? And you could tell this kind of had an impact on him. Very interesting. I should have had this ready. I apologize. But it's just right here. It'll only take a second. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. I told him this. I said, the Bible says that we suppress the truth. It's not that there isn't enough evidence, but that we actually suppress it. And I said this to him. I said, how come if you say, are we living in a simulation? People are like, oh, I don't know, I guess so. I said, if you ask if there's Bigfoot, they go, yeah, sure. Or no, or yeah, what, maybe. Yeah, there might be space aliens. Yeah. I said, but if you ask if there's a God, they're like, whoa. Got to think about that. Got to have some evidence for that. I said, why is that? Because it's consequential. It actually matters. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So they are without excuse. So to stop at the world, or what I've been calling on this channel, to stop short of the veil and say, oh, there's just not enough evidence, is what the Bible calls foolish. It's just foolish. And that I would have not that I would have done better than McGrath. I'm not saying that, because I want to tell you something. Weinstein, you don't see it with what I'm saying here, but Weinstein really has convictions. He's very serious about this. You can tell he believed what he was saying. And I think it took McGrath off guard. And I think unless you are a really skilled debater like James White, it's easy to sit here and watch the debate 6-7 times and be able to critique both these guys. I'm not saying I would have done better. I want you to know that. And I don't know that I know anyone that would have done better. It's not that Weinstein's arguments were that great. It's just that in the heat of the moment, it's not, we have to, like again, I still feel bad about my critique of Spencer a little bit, because this isn't easy to do. Okay. You're right there in front of a lot of people. You're expected to perform. We got to make sure, be grateful that these guys are willing to go up there and take the heat a little bit. Okay. So I want to offer caution on being too critical of McGrath here. But Weinstein was impressive, in my opinion. Not that the arguments were that impressive. It's just that he had conviction and he got to the point and he was substantive. Okay. Point number 3. The zany professor titles this a pressing matter. Okay. Weinstein, Old Testament wisdom is now immoral. Example, genocide in Deuteronomy. Weinstein continues, due to enriched uranium, we are pressed for time to arrive at answers about what to do for a future that avoids a doomsday scenario. A deity would have been concerned about this, yet the Bible is silent and thus outdated. Now, note to Sam Harris. This is what a substantive critique actually looks like. He didn't go, he didn't even bring up electronics. No, I'm sorry, I shouldn't make fun of the guy, but it's just so silly. But here, Weinstein is taking a similar argument, but he's tethering it to morality, right? He's saying, hey, listen, we have an existential threat in your enriched uranium. The Bible is silent on prophetic elements concerning this kind of technology, and he makes a very big assumption here. And he says, the deity of the Bible would have been concerned about this and wasn't. Whew. My thing here, I'm not saying because I think this is all that good of an argument. My thing here is that it just shows you how childish Sam Harris is. Not as a person, but as a thinker. He's just, Blackmore said that there's a bit of shallowness to all of their writings. No, there's a bit of shallowness to their arguments. And this is what Peterson was trying to explain to her. That I don't know. Okay, I have two responses to this. No, actually, I have one response that takes two forms. Okay, Weinstein's arguments here compel us to understand that he has two massive forms of ignorance. And I'm just being honest with you. Two massive, gaping blind spots in his perspective. Okay? The first form of ignorance is this. I would call it hermeneutical ignorance. Okay? What he says is this. In Deuteronomy, you get this sort of, Israel is commanded to perform genocide. And he says what Steven Pinker called Iron Age ethics. Iron Age ethics. It's just hard to take that kind of stuff serious. It just sounds so serious to them, and it's like, it's not actually that good of an argument. Okay, so he's like, look, this is clearly outdated. He did not say Iron Age. That's Pinker's terminology. And he says, and it's wrong. It's now immoral. It's hermeneutical ignorance because when you get to chapter 29, I believe, of Deuteronomy, you get one of the longest chapters in the Bible. I think it's 60 plus verses of God telling Israel, guess what happens to you if you fall into the same morality as those who occupied the land that I'm judging. Now, I want to offer to you, if you have issues with thinking that the Bible presents God as this moral evil creature, Paul Copan wrote a book called Is God a Moral Monster? Highly recommend it. Or you can just read Deuteronomy. And what does God do? I want to read my summary here. Also in Deuteronomy, Israel is warned that the same fate will come to them if they practice the same evil. God judges through agency, many times allowing mankind to participate in his divine messages and righteousness. Okay? So that is God's MO. He allows man to participate in goodness. And we could maybe I should do a little study, take it with a grain of salt because I'm off the cuff here, but it could be that you have one of two choices, that you can either participate in God's divine revelation here on earth or in evil. But anyway, he uses different agents in the Bible. And why, if he's prescribing genocide to these people, does he say the same thing will befall Israel if they fall into the same evil? That's clearly not genocide. That's something they're pasting over what's put there. God is using them as a tool of divine justice, and it was well deserved. Okay? And he says, don't think Israel's going to get out. Don't think that the Jews will not succumb to the same fate. He even was going to bring in foreign powers to overcome them. He prophesies this. He warns them, okay? So he must have just stopped at some point and quit reading Deuteronomy. It's the only thing I can say, right? It's just hermeneutical ignorance. He's unable to properly take. But again, if you're going to say, well, you can't, it's incoherent cover to cover, like he claims earlier, then you can stop anywhere you want and say, there you go, right? It just shows the shallowness of thinking here when you really pull off the cover and go, wait a minute, you're not really serious about this. Now, that's not fair for me to say about Weinstein. He's taken it serious, but let's be clear. There's some blinders here. He's not actually taking in the text as a whole. What would his defense be? Well, it's just incoherent. Well, it's not incoherent. You just want it to be incoherent. Okay? How does this fit in with what we read earlier in the same passage you cited? He cited Deuteronomy. You have to take Deuteronomy as a whole. And if he says, well, you don't have to take Deuteronomy as a whole, well, I don't have to take a sentence as a whole, right? I can apply any way I want. No, you can't do that. You have to take Weinstein would have to defend himself. He would say, no, you have to take what I'm saying serious, right? So then I'd have to interpret the whole of what you're saying, because what you're offering me is progressive. See the contradiction there? His view is that in the past, it may have seemed moral at the time, and now it's immoral, progressively, right? Well, why can he not offer the same thing to Deuteronomy? All right. Now, I said that he was in violation of two forms of ignorance. The second is this, systematic ignorance, which I've alluded to a little bit in the divine participation. He doesn't understand systematic theology. It's clear. He hasn't studied it. And if you're going to take these subjects as serious as he does, I would tell him and urge him to read a systematic theology text. They're imposing because they're huge. They're always thick. But, so, number 2, despite enriched uranium, I know it sounds silly. I know, but think about the whole of what he's saying. It's better than electronics. You hear electronics, you think, the little football game back in the 80s, you press a couple buttons and a little dot goes across the screen. Despite enriched uranium, we are still here. Weinstein's views on this are cowardly. And I don't like to speak bad of someone. I don't want to say anything behind their back that I wouldn't say to their face. And I try to live by that rule as much as I possibly can. But his views on this is cowardly. God sees beyond the flesh, right? And went to extraordinary measures to ensure eternal life, right? It's obvious. This is, if you take the Bible as a progressive revelation and apply it and understand it to all of these elements of the scriptures and apply proper hermeneutics, and then furthermore systematizes to your best of your abilities and these things, you come to a different understanding. You go, wait a minute, the destination of humanity is doom. Anyway, doesn't matter by what hand. Jesus made it very clear, all this will pass away. Paul says the highest priority should be love. But prophecy will end. Teaching will end. These things will end. Yeah, look at that. That's right. She's hearing that preaching. Fire and brimstone. That's right. She's loving it. It's because it's so zany. Well, I'm trying to imitate the zany professor. But okay. He went through extraordinary measures to preserve eternal life. Much more extraordinary than enriching uranium. More of the professor's notes. Ethical pragmatism is relative and means that in the future, Weinstein views can be seen as immoral and inadequate. Since I already believe this, I am ahead of the crowd. Yeah, I mean, they're relative. If back in Old Testament times they were inadequate, now how would he say he relieves himself of this? Well, he would say, my views are more practical than their views. But his views are a result of evolution, not necessarily true. Remember what we said in the first video. So therefore, things can evolve. And so another religious view can pop up and be more pragmatic. Weinstein, finally, will conclude with this. Worldviews in competition give rise to oughtness. in that we are pressed against world destruction. In Old Testament times, this was fine due to no world WMDs, weapons of mass destruction. My summary there summarized the very tail end of the debate. He did not even, this was not even a blip on his radar. I'm saying, since on this channel I've been questioning the oughtness, the prescription. He's just like, this worldviews are in competition in Old Testament times. And he said it was fine. He said, we don't have another 1,000 years to deal with enriched uranium and what could happen, the doom that could before us. So he's saying, because we got to solve this now. We can't wait for evolution anymore, even though his views are as a result of evolution. And my response is this. This is going to happen in Ethics 101. All right? Ethics 101. This might, if you're a junior in college, you take this class. This will happen in probably one of your earliest questions that's going to come up in class. Okay? You're in your house. It's World War II. You're hiding Jews in your attic. The SS comes by and is looking for them. They knock on the door. And if you're absolute, she's slain in the spirit over there or what? So they're asking questions and they come out. I'm sorry, this is going way over, so I have to make this fast. They're asking, where are they? If you're an absolutist in your ethics, right? And you go, it's always wrong to lie. And it's always wrong to murder. And you shouldn't participate in murder. And you're hiding them in the attic. What's the right answer? There's no easy answer, right? Okay, so he's saying we don't have time for evolution to do this. That means you have to arrive at absolute ethics, which means you're going to have to deal with contradictions, which means if you're saying that Old Testament ethics are contradicted by modern ethics and are outdated and are actually immoral, that means that they're actually immoral and immoral at the same time, as well as your ethics. You see the problem? So it didn't take a lot to actually sift through this. It didn't take a lot just to go under the surface. And you might be tempted one last time to go, why did McGrath do that? Because it's not that easy. He didn't have a week to mull over this and respond. You have to respond on the spot, you know? All right. Have a good one.